I'm here to present an overview of the revised National Policy on Disability. As a kind of background, a good number of us around this table have been involved in the development process over the years, actually with the review of the immediate policy, actually the policy we are still running until this is validated. And that was an engagement since 2010. So it might not be so new to us, particularly persons with disabilities who have had various levels of consultations and input to this, and MDAs from federal and state levels. So my presentation is just a guide of charity model of disability, the social model, the human rights model, the rehabilitation model, among others. And particularly to state that this reviewed document is actually premised on the social model and human rights model, which is a direction to go globally. And World Health Organization providing leadership to say disability itself as a definition is an umbrella term that is used to cover impairment, activities and limitations, and participation restrictions, not actually defining individuals. And the fact of United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability pushing the concept as an evolving one, and the fact that disability itself is a result of interaction between persons and impairments, and the attitudinal, including environmental barriers, that hinders effective and full participation of individuals on equal basis, which is pushed there by the society. And the fact that engagement on issues of disability should look at how these barriers, attitudinal, physical, structural, are removed to ensure that every member of the society gets what is due to them, their rights are enjoyed, and they are able to make full contribution to the development of the society. The document also alluded to the fact of data statistics challenges, especially globally as it regards disability, and the fact that World Health Organization moved by the statement in 2010, 2011 to say that we used to have 10% of any given population to be living with one form of disability or the other, but it increased to 15%. And projecting from 2006 data, population data of the country, and the data, it's projected that Nigeria has 25 million persons living with at least one disability, and about 3.6, a bit less than 4 million of these people are living with very significant difficulties in functioning, which means it is very important. And when we look at this population, we might be looking at population of some countries in the world, even particularly in Africa. And we are saying, as a country, we need to look at integration, mainstreaming of persons with disability in all walks of life. So the policy itself, which is a kind of action plan, it's an organized plan for removal of discrimination against persons with disability. It also would identify actions that countries like Nigeria would take to ensure employment, education, services, premises and facilities are accessible and not discriminatory to persons living with any form of disability. Like I said, the respect of the global commitments and the evolution of the work on disability has actually directed the ministry to look at what we were having before, which is a national policy on rehabilitation of persons with disability, to review it and look at what needs to be updated according to the global best practices and direction of effort in development issues. So the The policy is actually premised on fundamental and civil rights of persons with disability. It also used a model of a social model on disability, which talks about social adaptation, inclusion, and empowerment. And it's also moving away from the concept of welfareism and tokenistic kinds of services that are ad hoc, that are not comprehensive and not structured. It also looks at how institutions will be engaged to play their role in ensuring proper integration and mainstreaming of persons with disability and addressing issues around abuse and neglect. Particularly the policy, which I said before is formally known as Policy on Rehabilitation of Persons with Disability, but the fact that the work of development issues around disability is beyond just rehabilitation, actually necessitated the change of name. The policy itself is quite comprehensive to address all issues concerning persons with disability, and it will guide government actions and partners' actions, the guiding principles and procedures considered expedient, prudent, and advantageous, addressing disability-related developmental agenda of the government. It recognizes 13 causes of disability ranging from communicable diseases, accidents, age, heredity, and nutrition. The existing structure to manage this disability policy is premised on the 3 tiers of government, recognizing the leadership of ministry, departments, and agencies at all levels of government and working with all partners and all relevant MDAs. It also identifies roles of persons with disabilities and organizations of persons with disability, and roles of partners for PWD interventions, including development partners, implementing partners, CSO, charity organizations, and philanthropists. It actually has 10 objectives, which are to ensure disability issues are agenda of all spheres of socio-economic and political sphere of all individuals, to ensure maximum access of persons with disability to mainstream services and facilities, to promote the coordination of services and avoid unnecessary duplication of activities, to develop appropriate disability prevention and rehabilitation programs throughout the nation, to promote coordination between rehabilitation services and all other sectors, to promote an equitable national distribution of services, to prevent discrimination against persons with disabilities in all spheres of life, to provide persons with disabilities with tools to change their lives and give them a greater degree of independence. It also takes into account specific needs of different disability groupings and target populations. And it's also to increase awareness on disability issues and support national and international advocacy for persons with disabilities. Like I said, the development process is quite a lengthy one, and it started with a review of the formal policy and activities and interventions and programs targeted at persons with disability across the country. There were desk reviews and consultations of literature and global best practices and international obligations and commitments, international, global, and regional. And also there was a drafting of the policy, there was a consultation and sharing of the draft policy with stakeholders, with inputs taken from MDAs, associations of persons with disabilities, partners, DPOs, and other civil society organizations. There was a consultation meeting, particularly with DPOs, and this is a validation meeting, and we believe after this there will be some input into the document to make it what we are all going to be proud of and be ready to work with, and it will be produced and disseminated across all sectors and with all partners in the country. And there would be implementation of the monitoring of the implementation, and there would also be some special studies and evaluation of what is working and sharing of best practices. So if you look at it there in the chapter 1, it's organized in a way that you have introduction with available data on disability. You have some definitions there. You also have issues around disability, human rights, and development issues. We have causes of disability, the existing disability structure, and relevant declarations of the United Nations that are very critical for this body of work. This chapter 2 talks about the policy framework on disability, and each one had objective, the general principles, also talked about special target groups, which include older persons with disability, children with disabilities, women with disabilities, and persons living with disabilities in rural areas, on special consideration to policy guidance to take into considerations when programs are being organized to address issues pertaining to these persons. For the policy guidelines itself, which is on section 3, the good part of the document talks about that, and there are subsections to it, I think about 22 of them. Each one of them has subtitles, introduction, the policy objectives, and implementation strategies that are expected to be guiding everybody working in any of those areas of work. And the subsections are: 1, raising awareness around disability; prevention, early intervention, and health education; treatment, therapeutic aids, and orthopedic technical services; barriers to free access to information and communication. The 6th section is on education. 7th is on vocational guidance, training, and aftercare services. 8 is on employment. 9, culture and religion. The 10th area is sports and recreation. We have welfare services and housing, social security, transport, traffic, and road safety. Section 14 is on legislation. We have human resources and development. Section 16 is on data, information, and research. We have a section on organizations of and for persons with disabilities, the policy that should guide them. We have international cooperation. Section 19 looked at assistive devices. 20 is on intergovernmental coordination. We have monitoring and evaluation on section 21 and voting access on section 22. This section 4 of the policy document is on implementation, policy implementation. We have submission and allotted roles and responsibility to partners as it came from them, from feedback and interactions with all partners. We have sections, the first part on government at all levels, ministry, departments, and agencies. We have organizations of persons with disabilities. We have for civil society organizations and organizations of persons with disabilities. We have public-private partners and enterprises. We have international donors and development partners. We also have academia and research institutions for their roles and responsibilities, and the media are also there with the roles and responsibilities that they should carry out. In conclusion, the development of this revised policy document is a major progress. We all want to agree to the efforts of government in ensuring inclusive development agenda in Nigeria. And we believe inputs from everybody has made it to where it is, and we also believe it will further entrench the achievement of sustainable development goals globally, and as Nigeria is contributing to that. And we believe the government is poised to provide leadership, working with all partners to ensure all obligations are respected and observed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yinka Falola-Noma. That was a lovely presentation. Before we move to the next item on the agenda, I would like to recognize the presence of the outgone Director of the Rehabilitation Department, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, and person of Ms. Mujisola Victoria Kitelo. You are recognized. A round of applause, please. Then secondly, I would equally like to recognize the presence of the celebrants. If you're a PWD in our midst today, you are highly recognized. Can you give yourself a round of applause, please? So the next item on the agenda is a presentation of identified gaps on the revised policy on disability. And Dr. Istre Balogun will be doing justice to that for us. So Dr. Balogun, you are welcome to. A round of applause, please.
No, it's okay. Yes, I think I wanted
okay, laptop.
Somebody.
Your laptop?
Yeah, I give them the flash.
Okay. Yes. So where is the laptop?
The laptop is there. Let me get it. Yes.
Will I get it for you?
Good morning, everybody. I'm standing on the existing protocol. We've identified some gaps that we noticed. Exactly, yes, thank you. Sorry, a minute, please. Thank you very much. Yes, take it back. Thank you. I'll be done now. Okay. So thank you very much. I'll be making the presentation on the policy gap that we noticed during the process of looking at this policy as a whole. Before I go further, there's need for me to outline the next slide, please. Okay. To give an outline of what I'll be talking about briefly: definition of disability, disability terminologies, models of disability, current data on disability, context of disability, challenges faced by a person with disability, highlight of the policy, and why disability in international development. But I'll be so brief with some of them. We all know that disability can happen to anybody at any point in time. And in time past, disability was more of a charity approach. It has metamorphosed into medical approach, and later on social model was being considered. But presently, we are all laying emphasis on the human right approach, which take cognizance of all the other approaches, and it's embedded in the human right, because disability issues are human right issues. So for the purpose of these gaps, I'll go strictly to the context of disability. The challenge is we have different forms of disability. In the context, please. We have diverse forms of disability. I'm a physically challenged person, secondary to polio. I also have some people that are hearing impaired, visually impaired. And if you look at it, there are different forms of disabilities, like the first speaker has enumerated. And as persons with disabilities, that's our disability, we face different forms of barriers. And these barriers are not limited to us alone. We face barriers in the society, economically, educationally, health-wise, and so on and so forth. For disability statistic in Nigeria, we actually don't have one. But what we have globally, which we use, is this. we said approximately 15% of the world population, according to the World Bank, live with one form of disability or the other. And we need to understand disability is a continuum from children, adults, and old age. And to tell you the truth, anybody can become a person with disability at any point in time. So this disability statistics that we talked about comprises of children with disability, adults with disability, and even older people. And about 80% of persons with disability live in developing countries. And 1 in 7 of world's poorest people have a disability, according to the World Bank and WHO report of 2011. We all know that poverty can be both a cause and a consequence of disability. In Nigeria, we recognize that data is very important, but the major challenge we face in this country is that data can be questionable. And it's a major challenge. For us, we use the 15% to extrapolate that 15% represent about 27 million people of persons with disability actually living with disability. Based on the last census that was done, it was estimated that 2.3% of the population are living with disabilities. And if you look at that data very well, you realize that it does not take cognizance of the various types of disabilities. Because if you look at the definition of disability as a whole, it goes beyond impairment, it goes beyond activity limitation. It's from the societal perspective and from a human rights approach. So you realize that this 2006 data wasn't a reflection of this disability. And many types of impairment were limited. There were just about 5 categories or so. And as far as 5% of people with disability have access to assistive devices and prostheses. So highlight of the gaps in the policy that we saw. They were, at first, when we reviewed the policy together, I must confess here that they did a fantastic work. I must commend the consultant and every stakeholder that contributed to it. We realized that they were looking at it from a social model. And one of the inputs we made is this: disability should not be a social model anymore. A social model is embedded in the human rights model of disability. The human rights approach is what is being promoted worldwide based on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Actually, it started from the American Act with Disability that was promulgated in 1990 by President George Bush. And this has been the template for other right-based approach. So we need to know that disability issues should be taken in the context of the human rights approach and not social, medical, or charity approach. All those approaches are important, but we want to see it from a human rights approach. That is the latest trend. Like we all know, disability is actually evolving globally too. So the UN Convention actually marks a paradigm shift in the attitudes and approach to persons with disabilities. We are not to be viewed as object of charity, medical treatment. Fortunately, I am a medical doctor by training. One of the major aspects where I have issues with my colleagues is the medicalization of disability. It's a wrong concept. And so also the religious aspect. Sorry, with apologies to the religious leaders, I also happen to have a religious background. We are not charity people. It's our right, as enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria and in other charters, human rights charters that have been signed worldwide. So we said no, it should be a right approach. We are capable of claiming those rights and making decisions for our lives based on free choices. We have the willpower to make our choice, our decisions. So, in other words, we also talked about the need that in this policy there must be a place for informed consent, as well being for us to be an active participant in the society. The challenge we always have is this: people make decisions for us. We say no. We want to be included at every stage of the process. In other words, we don't want tokenism. Tokenism is just a system whereby, okay, you gather 20 people without disability, and you bring 2 or 3 representatives of persons with disability, and you say you are bringing persons with disability. No, that is not what we want. We want what we call participatory approach, whereby we have adequate representation at all levels, in the design, in the planning, in the implementation, and also in the evaluation. This is what we are advocating for. Way forward in this policy, which has been captured, which we believe it will also, it's open for every one of us, because in the multitude of cancer there is safety. We need more input to develop a robust document that will speak to the future of persons with disabilities in Nigeria. We said that one, we want a joint review in national policy using participatory approach. We want integration and mainstreaming of sexual and gender-based violence issues to come up. We want to take cognizance of the socio-cultural perspective of the regions. I'll give you an instance. I'm from the North Central, I'm from Kwara State, and if you look at the divide, I'll tell you this. The way persons with disability are accepted in the North is quite different from the way they are accepted in the South. Actually, they face more discrimination in the South than in the North. So we need to take that cognizance of, cognizance of that perspective in our dealings and in the implementation of this policy, so that nobody will be left behind. And no region will be left behind. We also want to ensure that we capture all forms of disability, other forms of disability, like, for instance, albinism. For instance, psychosocial disabilities, which doesn't, we just talk about it, but in reality, it's not part of our main cluster, even at JONAPID level. We want to also take cognizance of the fact that disability issues are cross-cutting issues, cross-cutting across board. Additionally, we want a multi-sectoral approach. This is what we are proposing, that this policy in the implementation, it will take cognizance of this multi-sectoral approach, in the sense that, look, the Ministry of Women and Social Development is not the custodian of persons with disabilities. We are human beings. We have members that are farmers. We have members that need health. We have members that need educational support. Members that need employment. Actually, within the last 24 hours, I had calls from numerous persons with disability who have been discriminated. Despite having qualified certificate, they've been discriminated on the basis of their disability. They were not given employment. One called me yesterday and was lamenting. I had to encourage him. We want that to stop, so we want a multi-sectoral approach. Another challenge also is this, in the way forward, is disability risk and emergency situations. I live in the Northeast. I live in Bauchi. I can tell you, I have some of my friends here that live in the Northeast. Most of the humanitarian response have not actually captured the needs of persons with disability in this emergency response across the Northeast. So we want this policy to also take cognizance of this and address this issue. The next thing we also talked about is correcting discrimination and stigma. I schooled in London. I was a Chevney scholar, and I still remain a Chevney alumni. I'll tell you, throughout my 1 year at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where I schooled, I was never discriminated. I was a celebrity. Coming back to my country, from the road, somebody will call you Gurugu. It's one of the things we want this policy to address, the issue of discrimination and social stigma. It cuts across all regions, all sectors. Even a lot of civil servants, sometimes I tell people, they don't know I'm a medical doctor. Some people comes to see me, they look down on me. It's only when I now sit behind my desk, oh, can a doctor? Are you the doctor? You understand? We see it a lot, and we want this policy to address the issue of stigma and discrimination, which we see across board. So these are the major issues we are talking about here. And additionally, there is no policy that can be effective without legislation. I hope you understand. And this is what we are advocating for, that the disability bill that is before the presidency, which probably must have been transmitted to him, should be signed into law. Because if it's not signed into law, policies is nothing. It's useless. Because another government can come tomorrow and discard the previous policy and say, no, we are charting a new course. We also make recommendation that a disability-inclusive national document that will enhance the fundamental human rights of persons with disability in line with the CRPD and the SDG goals should be developed appropriately across board. It's not only this particular document alone, but across all sectors. We make recommendation that adequate data on disability disaggregated by age, by gender, and by disability types should be captured in the policy. Why is this important? I can tell you this, physically challenged, we have different forms of disability. We have visible and invisible disability. Someone that is asthmatic, I hope you know that is a person with disability. I hope you all know that, an asthmatic. I gave an instance, I said if you get involved in emergency response and an asthmatic is running away, let's say from Boko Haram, I have run from Boko Haram before, I can tell you the experience was not funny. You can imagine an asthmatic, there's a level to which he can run before, if he's fortunate, he might have a panic attack, which might make him to be the first victim to be killed. I hope you understand. So we are talking about the need for disaggregation of data by disability types. It's very, very important. Even in our cluster, we only have about 6 or 7 clusters. It's not a reflection of the number of persons with disabilities. We also talk about the need for comparative data with persons with disability and persons without disabilities. How do you know you are making progress as a nation? It's by comparing the enrollment of persons with disabilities and that of persons without disability in, let's say, school enrollment, completion of degrees, or alternatively, access to health services, access to labor market. You have to make a comparative data before you can know if we are making progress or not. But just saying, okay, only person with disability alone is like also segregating us. But you have to compare us with our contemporaries, our other persons without disabilities. These are what we are, this is one of the things we are advocating for in this policy. And we also talked about the need for us to take cognizance of universal design principles in every aspect of our infrastructural development. I'm glad I went around this structure. I think this is one of the only structures that to some extent is a little bit accessible in this country that I've seen. I've gone around, I can tell you this is just one of most of the structures. I mean, Ministry of Women Affairs, sorry, you are not accessible. Prime Minister of Women Affairs, your buildings are not accessible beside the lift. I've been there, I've gone around, you know, so we need to take cognizance of the universal principle of universal design. So that as it is, if this is embedded in the law, it will help us greatly. Then we talked about evidence-based research. Evidence-based research that will inform policy. We are not talking about, you know, in this country we carry a lot of research that are not used. We want a situation whereby if the Federal Ministry of Women and Social Development is doing a research, or maybe Ministry of Health or Education, they will use that research to inform policy, to adjust or improve or modify their policies at all levels. And we also want to say this, there is need for capacity building for all stakeholders. The challenge is this, we persons with disability, our capacities too are limited. We need a continuous form of training. I can tell you this, in my little stay in the developed world and my interaction with my colleagues that are persons with disabilities, there are enough rooms for them to build their capacities. Both educationally, socially, technical-wise, in the area of disability as a whole. I can tell you, let me give you a very practical scenario. In designing the exit route, the entry route for me to enter London School of Hygiene, I don't follow the same route with everybody. They had to train me on how to pass through different routes, how to change my route. I was like, wow, this is good. I remember a Nigerian that was working as a guard then told me, say, please don't go back to Nigeria. He said, all these things you are enjoying, you won't enjoy it when you go back. So we need a paradigm shift. Capacity building of all stakeholders needs to be built in understanding what disability inclusion means. A lot of legal practitioners doesn't even know what the disability law says. The UN Convention, they don't know. Even some states that have passed legislation, they don't even know how to implement it. That's not the truth. I just finished writing a proposal. We got a funding from Australian government for Disability Rights Commission. And the target is to build the capacity of stakeholders on how to mainstream disability across the world. We don't also want it to be limited to mainstream disability alone, please. We need specific services for different types of persons with disabilities. In conclusions, policies are very important in promoting disability inclusion. Appropriate legislation and implementation strategies remain the backbone on which policies can function effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Israel Balogun. Can we give him a sound round of applause, please? I quite agree with him. The issue of disability can come at any given time. Nobody prays for it, but when it comes, it comes. There's just nothing you can do about it. Ideally, I will love the situation whereby empathy is placed above sympathy. If I were to be this person, what would I have done? That's one. Then number two, the political will. You will all agree with me that in this country, Nigeria, we have all what it takes to put up the best structure. But our challenge is maintenance. We can do everything at any given time. But the political will is what we should all pray for. And I strongly believe that the good Lord will give us the political will in Jesus' name. So the next item to be taken is if there are comments, discussions, and I will be doing that with my lovely aunt here, Mrs. Titi Lokwe Fakoya. You are welcome on stage, man. A round of applause, please.
I like the way my family has grown this morning. So now I have a nephew, my lovely aunt here. So welcome again. We want to open the floor for comments, contributions, questions. We want to respond to the last two speakers, what have been spoken. So I can see 3 hands up. Can we take them in order of numbers? Okay, now there are many. Please, can I just give you numbers as the hands have gone up? 1, sir, your hand went up first. Your hand was second. Your hand was third, fourth. We'll take the first 4 and then we'll come back for another round. Please, thank you. Yes, sir. Do please sit down if you're more comfortable doing that.
Good morning, everybody. Kindly permit me to stand on the already established protocol. Ajawa Labode is my name. I represent Lagos State. I want to commend Dr. Balogun for that very explosive presentation. I was deeply happy that we have that this morning. And that's where my comment is coming from. We can have 1 million policies. If we don't have legislation to back it up, it becomes a waste. So I want to encourage all stakeholders to put pressure on the political class to make sure that we have that bill signed into law, so that all the policies that we've had before and one we are also trying to develop now and subsequent ones, we benefit the target group. Thank you.
You know, sir, what you should say is, as we have done in Lagos State, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't want to blow my trumpet, but since you have asked me to blow it, Lagos State happens to be one of the states that has gotten a law in the way of disability, and we're implementing it to the grace of God.
So it's not about blowing trumpets. It's about a state that has done this and set an example for 14 other states to follow, isn't it? I think 10 states have done that. I can see my friend Alhaji Rabakaya, we've done that also in Jigawa State, yes, because we are those pushing and supporting them to do that. And there are 10 states that have already got the disability bill written into law, but then 10 out of 36. And Kwara State and Adamawa State and all the other ones. A round of applause for all those who have done it. Eh? Yes. So, more comments, contributions, but that is very valid, isn't it? Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Onwe. I'm a member of Jonah PED and the president of Association of Lawyers with Disabilities in Nigeria. I commend the presenters. I just have just few observations. First, when we talk about disability issue as a human right issue and stop there without contextualizing it within the Nigerian Constitution, and may not actually make sense. So we have to include that the human rights provision of the Constitution should be understood and interpreted to recognize the peculiarities of persons with disabilities. For instance, if its right to movement is a human right provision, it therefore includes that the environment should be accessible for persons with physical disability to move in. If the Constitution says that there should be freedom of expression, that should be interpreted to mean that the deaf should actually have sign language interpreters, and the blind should also have braille facilities, because these are their means of expressing themselves. And it goes on and on. And there's also the issue of that the disability decree of 1993, which I still find in the document. We need to put the record straight. Otherwise, we'll be sending the wrong message. There had never been anything like a disability decree in 1993. It never existed. It does appear that there was a draft bill that was passed then, but it was never enacted into law. It doesn't form part of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. If there was ever a decree, then that decree should still be subsisting unless it was specifically repealed. But there was nothing like that. And they also say the document also provides issues that there is no legal provision mandating the representation of persons with disability in policy making. I think it will make more sense, if we actually put that in context. Otherwise, it will be too vague. We have to state that it's actually an unfortunate development or contrary to the global trend, because the global trend is that persons with disability or their representatives should be involved in policy making, especially policies that affect persons with disabilities. Then, on the issue of employment, it's also nice for the disability policy to take cognizance of an existing policy along that line, which is the Companies and Allied Matters Act, which provides that public companies, in doing their annual reporting, should state the number of persons with disability in their employment. So if the Matters Act should state that, I think the policy should also emphasize on that, because the beauty of it is that if companies must disclose how many persons with disability in their employment, those who do not have persons with disability in employment will be forced to employ persons with disability in their employment, because it would be a shame and prejudicing their corporate image to declare to the whole world that we do not have persons with disability in our employment. Then the policy also talks about initiatives of the government towards promoting disability issues. I think it would also be good if we mention at least one or two examples of such initiatives. Then, I'm rounding up. Then under the sporting, it would also be good for it to contain that disability sports experts, or rather disability sports champions, should not be treated less than other sports champions. There are cases where sporting persons with disability will go out and win several gold medals, and they'll be received with a very cold shoulder. Meanwhile, the other sporting people will just go and win 1 bronze or 2, and they'll be given a heroic welcome. So these are my observations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this level, I will like to, before we take the next round of questions, I would like to usher in the head of the DFID, Department for International Development, in the person of Mr. John Primrose. You are most welcome, sir, to the IT.
Thank you very much.
If you have anything to say now.
He has his opening remarks coming up, but I think for now...
Okay, so we can go ahead with the question and comments.
We were clapping for him before he came inside. Now he has come inside, eh?
So
it is now right for us to give him the round of applause that he wants. Thank you for honoring this invitation. And while I'm still in a clapping mood, there's a special category of people that I'd like to recognize today. Those who have been interpreting, those who have been giving the sign language interpretation of what is going on to persons with auditory impairments. Eh? So please, a special category of people here doing a lot of hard work for differently abled people. We should give them this round of applause. Beautiful. Great work, ladies. Thank you. So we're going on with the questions now. Thank you very much for your comments. Those were good comments. Thank you. We're taking note of them. We gave numbers. Madam, I'll take your hand in a minute. There was somebody here. 3, 4, sorry. Right. It was his turn because I was being careful to then I'll come over and then we'll take some more questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am Comrade Samuel Obiefna. I represent Jonapi, the Enugu State Council. I also coordinate the Enugu Civil Society Disability Policy Partnership. I have 2 comments to make. One, we cannot be talking about data of disabled people properly disaggregated by age, sex, and gender, okay, without talking about the proper population of persons with disabilities. I mentioned this earlier, that it is a noticeable gap in this policy. I don't know why it wasn't in line with what we discussed today. That policy will never work if we do not know how many we are. I'll give you an instance. Nobody here is comfortable with the with the WHO report of 2011. All of us said it's not accurate when it comes to developing countries of the world. Nigeria doesn't even have population of persons as they were accurately made. So we want to know how many we are, how many of us who are disabled, so that this policy can work. And this policy has to contain a section. A section of it must include the fact that the National Population Commission and the NBS should be involved in getting to know how many we are and our types of disabilities. That's one. Finally, I wouldn't like us to begin now to doubt the workability of this policy. The reason is that in Enugu, for instance, for the past 12 years, we've been fighting for the passage of the Enugu State Disability Rights Bill into law. It has been failing. The farthest it has gone was up to the first reading, after which it died till today. And I know how much DFID spent for us to get that thing done through Savvy. Today, what is working in Enugu was that we saw the whole bill couldn't work. We now decided to get an inclusive education policy with the Ministry of Education, which has been mainstreamed in almost all the MDAs now, and it is working out. So while we are waiting for the National Disability Bill to be signed into law, which we don't even know its fate for now, this policy should be given full support. We don't need to doubt it. Let us get it done and then mainstream it in all the MDAs. Let it cut across, and you find out that our future may be bright before the bill is passed into law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beautiful comments. Thank you. As you can see, going forward, there's a word from the National Bureau of Statistics. There's a word from MPOPC to show you that we are listening to the things that you have said, so they are involved. And the Global Summit on Disability actually has something on inclusive education. So we'll talk about that before today is over. So great points there. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
All protocols duly observed. I am Mrs. Tope Fashi, Executive Secretary, Ondo State Agency for the Welfare of Persons with Disabilities. I also have my essay here to Mr. Governor on Special People. I want to thank the doctor who gave us more enlightenment on the word disabilities. He made some germane points that we should not just listen to it, but action must start now. Like he said, that Women Affairs should not be the custodian of policies, organizations, and programs for disabled. Because he said disability cut across all various professions and human beings, like we have farmers, crafts people, and so on and so forth. Then I want to ask, is it not possible for this country to have Ministry of Disabled? Or let's say Ministry for Special People. Don't you think our requests and plans will work faster? Like he said he wants maximum participatory. Not place where we have 25 people to discuss on issues that will affect all people, like inclusion of persons with disability, and we just have 3 people among the 25. How can we have their voice lifted? Then, if that continues, we don't have people in the legislative house. Can't we, the people with disability, come together and ensure that we sponsor 1 or 2 people to be part of legislators? When we have 2 or more people in the legislative house, I think our bill will see the light of the day, and there will be more stability and more effectiveness in whatever bills or in whatever policy we make. It will go bill and then it will make it to law. Another thing I want to say is that now that we have, I want to thank God that things are moving forward for the word disability. This is not where we were 4 years back, 7 years back. Things are really moving, but it can move faster. Now that we have a lot of appointments, even at the top echelon, with the president, we have a representative there. With the governors, we have so many senior special assistants, special advisors here and there, Jonapi persons here and there. Can't they go underneath, lobby, do a lot of things? Because when you are even going to the presidency, do we even have these special routes for special people? I want to say no. And we have a representative there. The earlier I started on that, the better, so that can emulate. Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, by way of process, I will take 2 more questions. Then we'll listen to the objectives of the meeting. That's a very short presentation, so we can hear what the DFID head of office has for us. So 2 more comments. We'll take a break. I know, but the gentleman there, his hand has been up since. By way of process, you know, today is a day of voice. Believe me, I'm just rearranging the sequence. 2 more short, sharp questions, and then we will listen to the other presentations. I want to give it to this gentleman here. Please, pardon me. His hand has been up for a long while.
Thank you very much. Please permit me to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Dr. Eboho Michael Ndidi. I represent John Pitt from Ogun State. Yesterday, issue of person with disability took a prominent place in the Senate, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, when our good senator said he's moving from one divide to the other divide so that he can have a comfortable seat. That's Senator Dino Melaye. So that's on the lighter mood. But today, sir, with what the 2 speakers, the 2 doctors have presented, it's really mind-boggling. But I want to mention this. The categories of the target group of people living with disability. We have the children, the adults, the women, and those in the rural setting, leaving out the youth with disability, and which is a very critical sector, because in our prayer this morning, after praying for the leaders, we pray for the youth. So in this policy, what do we have for the youth? I want us to take that in consideration. Then in the area of the sports, we look at what policy, what statement are we trying to woo organizations that are interested in promoting sport for PWDs. What policy to guide that area? Because issues of persons with disability is an issue that we have been far discriminated against for a very long time. So for people taking our issue, meeting with adequate attention, it takes a lot. That is that. Then on the area of the research center, I want to suggest to be added into this policy. The research center should not be located at the national level alone. It should trickle down to the state and the local. Take, for instance, in the first quarter of this year in Ogun State, John Pitt and JPC partnered together to conduct a research about the poverty baseline of people living with disability in Ogun State. The result was quite scary. So I equally want to suggest that this research center in this policy should have a replica in the state and in the local. Thank you very much.
Over there. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here today to see something about the policy. First of all, I want to thank the organizer. Thanks for the Federal Women Affairs for the involvement of we people with disability in Nigeria at the level of our right to be made. We all have to know that the rejecting us means we national natural assets. All of us are assets in one way or the other. Perhaps by abandoning us, you don't give us the opportunity to contribute to the national development. Not capable to develop, to contribute to national development means both disabled and and non-disabled are suffer. Whatever the national policy said, in the general principle in the policy, it is important to add there that persons with disability have the right to actively participate in policy preparation, policy implementation, policy supervision,
Okay. Sorry, I'd like to, what I'm saying, in the general policy, the general policy, it is important to add there in the policy that persons with disabilities, they have to be fully involved in the policy planning. From the planning to implementation and supervising and even the evaluation of the policy. So you don't just call us after you finish planning the policy. That means you're not fully involved. We have to be involved from the beginning to the end. Another important thing there is we have abandoned the community because we are not involved in the policy. That is the area where we should be there, that the traditional rulers, the parents of persons with disabilities, they have to come out and make it their responsibility for persons with disabilities. If the policy goes and the community does not understand it, they are not aware of it, what happens? We cannot continue with such policy. And the next important responsibility goes to the Federal Ministry of Information and Orientation. Well, if we do a meeting here and we go, information, they should continue to inform people, repeat it, create awareness about it, so that the society will come to be aware of this project, and then they will know that it's part of our human rights. We are aware that in some states they've signed disability bill. For me as a person, those states, they're doing nothing. Go to Lagos, they're saying Lagos, Lagos, Lagos. Please just go there and see what is happening. They just signed the bill and it's there. There is no implementation. The persons with disabilities are not involved. If you see persons with disability in Lagos, please just go there and see them so you will see for yourself. They are not involved in the planning and the implementation. So let's copy that. Especially with them, we have a bitter complaint about that, especially in the area of education. Many schools, they just establish the schools. There is no resources. The teachers, interpreters, are they skilled? And often, our deaf students are not involved. The teachers are not involved in the process. So they sign the policy. After signing the policy, what next? Lastly, the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs they have to call all the states and the commissioners for women affairs to their responsibilities. Please inform them, all the states, that they are not up to their responsibilities. It is a shame to the states that most times they are the ones blocking the ways for us because we're not included. So please, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, do something on this. Thank you.
Can we give him a round of applause once again? Thank you very much. If you look at the agenda we have, you have with you there, the next item on the agenda could have been tea break. But because of the exigency of work in the office of the head of DFID, he may not be able to take, much of our time today. So we skip the tea break. We're not skipping it for life. We're going to go back to it. So we're going to go to the next agenda after the tea break, which is objective and expected outcome of the meeting. And Deputy Director in the Rehabilitation Department of the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, in person of Mr. Valentine Vanshikwe will be doing justice to that for us. So you have the floor, sir. Thank you. A round of applause, please.
I'm standing on existing protocol, please. But let me also recognize the presence of the head of office of the FID, who is in our midst. I wouldn't waste much of your time. The objectives and the expected outcomes of this meeting are not much. One, why are we here? The main objective why we are here is to present the revised national policy on disability in Nigeria for validation by stakeholders. Two, we are also here to adopt the revised national policy on disability by stakeholders. Then, thirdly, we are to develop a draft common document on federal government's commitment for the UK Global Disability Summit, which is forthcoming in July. Then what is our expected outcomes? One, a validated national policy on disability. And two, a draft government commitment for the UK Global Disability Summit, of which you are going to hear more about it from the head of office of the DFID. Thank you very much.
A round of applause, please. I think we all know why we are here now. So the next thing to take in is an overview of a global summit on disability, like Dee rightly said, coming up in July in London. So the person to do the needful to this very topic for us is no other person other than Mr. John Primrose, head of the FID in Nigeria. So can we give him a round of applause, please? You are the first.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Firstly, an apology for keeping you from your tea. I know how important that is as someone from Britain, but I'm assured tea will emerge in due course. I really want to thank you for your very kind welcome. It gives me huge pleasure to be here representing the Department for International Development in the United Kingdom. Nigeria matters a great deal to the UK. Nigeria has and will continue to work with Nigeria to ensure that the country can use its resources to eliminate poverty and ensure we leave no one behind. In many of the countries that we work, including Nigeria, people with disabilities face an unacceptable level of discrimination and stigma. Many have not benefited from the progress of economic development and continue to live in poverty. No one should be denied the opportunity to realize their potential. And no one should have their interests systematically overlooked. This needs to change. People with a disability should be able to participate in and benefit equitably from everyday life. Nigeria is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. This and today's workshop proves your leadership in recognizing and responding to the needs of persons with disability. I would really like to recognize Nigeria's efforts in submitting country progress reports on articles of the Convention of the UN. But more needs to be done. This includes ensuring the appropriate legislation and policies are in place and crucially implemented, like the Disability Bill. There are various estimates for the number of persons with disabilities in Nigeria, as my colleague mentioned earlier. As was mentioned, the World Report on Disability states 25 million. I've heard numbers above that also. And at least 3.6 million of these people live in very significant difficulties. There is a largely negative attitude in many places towards people with disabilities, a strong stigma and a charity or a welfarist approach to supporting them. This needs to be addressed and recognised. Women with disabilities are particularly disadvantaged, experiencing exclusion not only because of their gender but also disability. These challenges and costs are borne not just by those with disabilities but also their families, often for generations, but also society at large that's not experiencing the potential that these people have to offer to Nigeria. Disability inclusion is a top priority for the UK on our international development work. We want to ensure that people with disabilities are consistently included in and benefit from international aid and humanitarian assistance. Our programmes are required to respond to the needs of persons with disability. For example, our work on protection, protecting the most vulnerable in, for example, humanitarian settings, is very much mainstreamed with a disability lens. Our work on governance also through the project PERL is very much mainstreamed also with the thought of disability in mind. We're providing support to our partners in civil society, the legislature, media and professional and faith-based groups to work in socially inclusive ways and proactively identify where opportunities to mainstream disability may be evident and to really seize on those opportunities. The disability inclusion, for us, it comes right from the top. Our Secretary of State, who is formerly in charge of disabilities policy for the UK, is hugely motivated and energised by this agenda. In December of 2017, she said, "For too long, people living with disabilities in the world's poorest countries have not been able to fulfil their potential due to stigma and a lack of practical support. They are missing out on school and the chance to work." In that very same speech, she said, we're going to create a global summit, and that will be scheduled in London on July the 24th, 2018. The summit will bring together global leaders and technology companies to tackle the barriers that prevent people living with disabilities from reaching their full potential. The summit will generate commitments on quality education, jobs, healthcare and public infrastructure. It will also showcase technological innovations that can change disabled people's lives. The summit, which will be the first ever global disability summit, will be hosted by the UK government in partnership with the government of Kenya and the International Disability Alliance. Our aim is it will transform the lives of the disabled by, number one, raising global attention and focusing on a hugely neglected area. Number two, mobilising new global and national commitments to meet and implement the ambitions set out in the Global Goals and UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And lastly, showcasing best practices and evidence from around the world. The Global Disability Summit will be a major international event which will establish strong leadership from emerging partners and new donors, secure engagement from the private sector and increase domestic budgets and for disability inclusion. People with disabilities will be at its heart, and the government of Nigeria is participating. It is so important that the voices, just as my colleague was mentioning before, are heard. Disabled people, disabled rights groups are heard as we think about what the commitments might look like that we're taking to this summit. And that's why we've created this event today. That's why we've invited yourselves and the government of Nigeria and other groups to really think about what can Nigeria bring to the table to this summit to really make it count, to make it really matter. So that's why we've supported it today. As a last word, I just want to say the UK is completely committed to ensuring that our programmes and our policy and all of our work is dedicated to improving the life of persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Primus. Can we give him a round of applause once again? Okay, ma'am. next item on the agenda is a goodwill message by the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Disability Matters, but I've been reliably informed that the person is unavoidably absent. So we go to the next one. So the next agenda is address addressed by the Honorable Minister, ably represented by the Acting Director in charge of rehabilitation of persons with disabilities in the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development. There's no other person other than Mrs. Nkechi Onkwe. You have the floor. A round of applause, please.
The Commissioner of Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, Osun State, Comrade B. Lunlade, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, ably represented by Mr. Valentine Ezulu, the head of the Office of BFID, Mr. John Primrose, the Country Director, Site Savers, Dr. Sunday Shako, the State Ministries of Women Affairs and Social Development, the MDAs present, Directors of Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, the President of Joint Action of Persons with Disability, Ms. Kaite Umon, the PDWDs present, ladies and gentlemen of the press, I bring greetings from the Honorable Minister of Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, Senator Jumai Aisha Al-Hassan. She sent her greetings to all. And she's really waiting for the outcome of this meeting because issues of disability is so key to her heart, as well as other focal points that are the ministry. She has an opening remarks. I will just go ahead and read her opening remarks. I am very delighted to be in your midst today at this auspicious event. I would like to first and foremost start by congratulating the sponsors of this very important meeting, the UK Department for International Development, funded partnership to engage, reform, and learn. The process for the review of national policy for the rehabilitation of persons with disability in Nigeria commenced in line with international best practices. And in order to incorporate global emerging issues of disability into government working documents, the journey has been a long one, which started with the preparation of the government position paper on current disability issues in the country, following the production and dissemination of the report of 2010 National Baseline Survey on Persons with Disability in Nigeria. Thereafter, documents, programs, projects, desk review were carried out by resource persons who produced the zero draft of the revised policy. The zero draft was shared among all stakeholders, which include 36 states and FCT, other stakeholders which include the PWDs. It also incorporated the first draft, which inputs were collected and incorporated in the first draft, which were also circulated among stakeholders. The country had demonstrated strong will and commitment towards the issues of disability in the country. For example, the government endorsed and supported the successful candidacy of a Nigerian as a member of UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2014. It should be noted that government has endorsed his candidacy for re-election in forthcoming 11th session of Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, scheduled to hold from 12th to 14th June 2018 in New York, USA. It is also worthy of note that this present government appointed for the first time a person with disability as a senior special assistant to the president on disability matters. The enactment of a national disability law is also almost at the final stage. We are also at the final stage of submission of the Nigerian initial report, country report on implementation of article of the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability, to mention but a few. This meeting, which has a dual aim of validating the revised policy on disability in Nigeria and developing the draft document on federal government commitment in preparation for the upcoming UK Global Disability Summit, is very crucial. It will help us in presenting a formidable document and a common front towards addressing disability issues in the country. The ministry will not relent in ensuring within our mandate that this advocacy and sensitization, capacity building, empowerment program, as well as monitoring and evaluation, amongst others, towards improving the lives of brothers and sisters living with disability in the country, are sustained. Our doors are always open for more collaboration towards achieving this. At this point, I want to thank all the PWDs, our state counterparts, our ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as partners for their contribution and submission toward the review processes. On this note, once again, I commend all our state counterparts, other MDAs and partners, and most importantly, the UK Department for International Development, the FID, for funded partnership to engage, reform, and learn. Is an affiliate of the FID, for their support, and wish all a fruitful meeting. Thank you for listening.
Can we give our Honorable Minister a resounding round of applause once again? Having done that, we go to, we go to the next agenda on the next item on the agenda, which is tea break. But before then, the organizers would like to have a kind of group photograph with the participants. So as soon as we finish the group photograph, we'll go for the tea break. Meanwhile, I have a piece of announcement for the state's delegates. For those that are coming from the states, you should try and see Mr. Patrick at the registration desk. I think he has something for those that are coming from the states. Thank you. Want to say something? Yes. Okay, I'm coming. No, he wants to say something. His question or something? Question? And that should be later.
Good morning, everybody. I want to start on the existing protocol. My name is Ihekwa Paul. I'm in a hurry to just say this because we're going for a tea break. I don't, conventionally, the high table they're always busy. They might take the leave. I don't know. So I needed to really get something very clear for myself. I listened, though not from the beginning, Mr. John's speech, and it was fantastic. And then the minister's this thing. There is something that is really bothering me, and I need to really get it clear. Is this policy that is to be validated? What is a policy? Because policy is a policy. Policy does not supersede legal framework. A policy can be changed by any government at any given time. So it does not have taproot. What is the position of Federal Ministry of Women Affairs? Because I remember before this very present bill went to the Senate, to the presidency, when there was a public hearing, the position of the ministry as represented by the then director, one of us then, the visually impaired, I've forgotten her name, you know, was that the ministry categorically is against commission, you know, vis-a-vis the bill. And I remember that in that very public hearing, I said that, Madam, this is the voice of Jacob, by the hands of Esau. I do not see you representing the interests of the people that you are part of them. You know, and after that very meeting, we saw outside, he said, Paul, I think, thank you very much because you rescued me. That actually was the position of the ministry, not my personal position. I am asking again, what is the position of the ministry? Because, as you said, ma'am, that the federal government has a strong will on the stability issue, and that they have been on the land, you know, the final visit of the bill. They have been on this final thing since 1999. It went to them under Obasanjo, it failed. It went to them under Goodluck, it failed. Now it is there again. And the ministry has not favored the bill. And right now, because without that bill, whatever policy that is being made is sitting on a sandy soil, not a solid rock. So if the bill does not enjoy the full support of the ministry, and there is another kind of policy calling us here to come and do the more you look, the less you say, it will not, for me, it does not really stand. But if there is a commitment by the ministry, because Mr. Johnson, in your very country, there is a national enactment law that supports disability issues. There is none in Nigeria. And if we go to that very summit and we give them the kind of that, look, everything is well here, everything is not well with us, because there is no law that can give us the framework upon which we can act, upon which accessibility on all round can be done. Somebody spoke about Ministry of Women Affairs, and I heard somebody saying it is stigmatization. It is not stigmatization. Otherwise, Niger Delta Ministry is also stigmatization. You don't say that. So, what I'm saying is, we must come up and have the political will to do what is right on disability. The issue of rehabilitation, there's a paradigm shift globally on disability. It is no longer this welfare thing, charity model approach. It should be inclusive, participatory. And that is what is going on around the world. So what we are saying is, what is the position of the ministry as regards to the bill? Is there any support of the ministry? What is the position categorically? So we can know that your support is that, yes, this bill should stand, should be signed. But if the ministry have a particular position, and then from the bill and from that commission, then I will rather move a motion that the policy be stamped down until the bill is passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. What's the name again, sir? Paul. That was a thought-provoking whatever. So I would like to give floor to those on the item if there is any responses to those comments, questions that have been raised earlier and now. If there is any, okay, ma'am. You have the floor, ma'am.
Hello. Good day once again. We are so happy you are here saying it as raw it could be. That's the essence of your being here. We welcome all these comments. I'm taking note, everybody taking note. There's also a desk taking note. I think the ministry doing what it's doing. We have a position. There's a position for the bill. There's also a position for the policy. Even if the bill is passed tomorrow, we still need a policy to guide the work everybody is doing. And it is the work of the ministry to develop policy. And not developing it alone, it develops it with stakeholders, which includes everybody, including you people, being the paramount people, paramount persons. But I want us to know we should move from the level of the ministry and us. We should work together. The journey has, they say a journey of 1,000 starts from a step, and the step has started. If we pull down the policy that guide our work, which is the role of the ministry to do, what we work with? Every DPO here, every NGO here, every MDA here will drive strength from this very policy. And the beauty of this policy is you go to page 30, which everybody has a copy, you will see that everybody has a role to play. I'm not discarding the gaps identified, but I've discovered that most of these gaps identified is going to fit in very well in implementation. You don't have a encyclopedia of a policy. You have highlight of a policy, which you have done. So it's when we start implementing that all these points mentioned will fit in from one sector to another sector. And I believe that as we are living here, we begin to track. We have to agree, accept our policy on disability, which is not the ministry's document. It's basically for disability issue. And we start tracking. You have a role, we still meet. We're not ending here, because like you are foreclosing the issue when we leave here, we've left. No, we are still going to call you again on strategies for implementation. Though we have listed them here, there will be another forum. After we have, even when we go to UK and come back, there will be a debriefing on the UK. From there, we start working on strategies for implementation. And what is even in vogue now is CBR, community-based rehabilitation, which has also been translated to community-based inclusive development, bearing in mind the position of sustainable development goals. Those are the guidelines. The UN Convention and ATG are the tools we have to work. I'm now asking all of us, can we bury our hatchet and start working? Can the work start? Let's stop, anybody who didn't do what you wanted him or her to do might have issues that it didn't happen. I know in your own different work, you might have one issue. Nobody can really claim he has done it all, especially in the issues of development, which comes with emerging issue every now and then. And you keep on building on these emerging issues. So developmental issues which the disability happen to, fall into changes with time. Every policy has a lifespan of 5 years. So this one we are reviewing has said 5 years. So we have reviewed it, and we have brought in emerging issue. We'll continue including this emerging issue. So I'm calling every one of us, can we accept our policy and start working on it? From implementation, we can now say, what are we doing? Are we doing good? Are we doing right? And thank God we also have partners who will support us. Thank you very much. Okay, sorry, on what we are doing, the ministry couldn't have, say, don't pass the bill. I was in a meeting yesterday. Somebody said the ministry went and bribed the National Assembly and then told the president then not to pass it. It's like giving somebody, I'm giving a charge of these glasses to keep, and I will now go and tell my principal, can these glasses be smashed? It's not possible. That's automatic sack. So it's just a total lie. The ministry is not against the bill, and the bill has moved to assent. Even with the help of Daughters of Charity, the ministry has developed a jingle to call on the president to sign the bill. Even the minister on her own, using her own personal power, goes into, is already moving on your behalf to ensure before the end of this administration that the bill is signed into law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The the representative of the minister. Initially, after Dr. Balogun spoke, I wanted to say something, but I saw that it was just about the participants on the floor. I just want to make this quick comment on what our distinguished participant just said. Speaking from the Honorable Attorney General's office, I know that except a bill originates from, or that bill originated from the Ministry of Women Affairs, there is no way that the Ministry of Justice would have worked on it. So it's not possible to originate a bill and at the same time kill that bill. So I don't know who was speaking. I don't know what they were talking about. Because it is the Ministry of Women Affairs that would have sent us the first draft. And then they will work with us. So I don't know. Maybe are there aspects of the bill, maybe you should have asked that person who was speaking, that she was not comfortable with, but I do not think it is true. But I understand where you are coming from, that the national policy cannot penalize anybody. Is that what you are talking about? But the executive takes this issue so passionately that before the bill comes, or before the bill is passed into law, he wants to do something for the persons with disability. And that is why it is allowed to work with the national policy. That is why it must keep working. Don't expect the government to fold its arms and watch the violation of human rights. And that is why it is working with the national policy. So the Attorney General also is in support of this national policy, but he is also in support of signing the bill into law because it will provide more and also penalize those who violate, the rights of persons with disability. So there is no fear at all about this national policy. Thank you very much. God bless you.
All protocols duly observed. I recognize the head. Let me just stand so that, you are very tall. You may block me. I want people to see me. I recognize the presence of the head of hospice of DFID. You're welcome, sir. And I want to, at this point in time, thank DFID so very much for bringing us together to talk. What I'm seeing here is an unintended outcome. Clear unintended outcome, but a very good outcome for all of us. We have the chance to talk. Bringing the demand, the supply side together to actually open up. And I like the response that the acting director has just given. Thank you so very much, ma. My colleague is speaking from the point of fear, and very valid fear as such, because in the last years we've suffered a lot of not too much sincerity around the disability bill. And because we've been here for about 16 years, you can imagine how we're feeling as persons with disabilities. We live with it. Every day of our lives, we're seeing things go so from bad to worse because we don't have a legal framework protecting our rights. So when we speak from the point of passion, please forgive us because we can't help but talk after 16 years. I hope you perfectly understand. So concerning the policy and the bill, we just want that kind of, will I say, assurance from the military that you are with us this time, full time. That's all that we want now. You understand? Because we've had some bad experiences in the past. We want to see that the ministry say, look, we are together in it, and this time we will go with you. I think that is what my colleagues are trying to express. And colleagues, I want to assure you, this time around is an open commitment. The acting director contacted me 2 months ago before we met in Lusaka. And she said to me, please, we are running a jingle on the disability bill. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. She's saying the truth. And I said, oh, wonderful. And she said to me, she sent to me the message, and there was a logo that didn't quite fit. And I said, excuse me, ma'am, this is a new logo. And I made my input, and I wanted to, see it go on. And we met at Lusaka, and I said, excuse me, ma'am, when is this coming on air? We really want to see it run, to see that the government, the ministry this time is with us. So I want to assure you, colleagues, we're in it together, and the ministry is ready to work with us this time. Let's put aside those fears. Let's also look at the policy. If there are gaps, let's look at it very well. For me, the gap in the policy is that the name has changed, the content hasn't changed. It's still tilting too much to the welfare charity side. If we say we experience barriers, and those are the barriers that is causing the the violation of our rights, let us try to address very clearly the barriers in this policy so that we know, yes, we have impairment. That is what it is. We are human rights. We have the right to enjoy rights on an equal basis with others, and we experience barriers. So I want barriers to be clearly addressed on this policy. So once again, I want to assure you, let's be calm and watch out and know that it will be better for all this time around. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I didn't think I needed to talk, but thank you very much for that passionate speech. Of course, the normal slogan, nothing about us. So we can all understand where you're coming from. It is better late than never. And I must commend the ministry. They have played a very active role in trying to make sure that at least we are talking. There is a beginning. We are talking. That's the most important thing. From a civil society point of view, from NGOs point of view, we need the policy. A lot of you work with NGOs, with civil societies. We need a roadmap. We need something that will guide us to support you collectively, individually. Please support this policy. It is not a perfect document. I don't think there is any perfect document apart from the holy books, depending on what you believe in. We'll have an opportunity, like she said, to keep improving as time and the issues emerge. We now have an opportunity to make an input into this policy. Let's make that input. It will help a lot of people, not even here. Most NGOs, most civil societies, when they come, when they want to support government, they want to support you, they will say, what is government's policy on disability? People will not ask you what is the government legal framework. They know the policy, and the legal framework helps them to ensure that they do not go foul of the law. We need the policy. I'm appealing to you. I know I've not consulted other civil society organizations, but I'm sure most of them will agree with me. The policy is a very vital document for people to be able to support you in whatever capacity, whether individually or collectively. Thank you very much.
Can we once again give the speakers a sounding round of applause, please? That wasn't enough. Another round of applause. So, like I said earlier, that he who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. The issue should be empathy, not sympathy. Because if you're wearing the shoe, you know where it pinches you. And I can assure you, be rest assured, that government is fully ready to accommodate any issue that has to do with disability this time around. It's been a while. Gone are those days where issue of disability is being treated as a charity issue. But this time around, the government, through the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social, is on top of the situations. Like Madam President has rightly said, we are on course. If we are going 10 miles, we've covered 5. Why do we need to go back? We look ahead, and the God Almighty will give us the grace to go ahead in Jesus' name. Can we say amen? And we don't believe in prayers. So at this level, I would like to call on the state delegates. The group photographs will be taken right in front of the building. As soon as you are done with that, we go for a tea break. While the tea break is going on, the state delegates should try as much as possible to see Mr. Patrick, because he had something for you people. So till we reconvene in the next 30 minutes, I think. Will it be ideal? Is it okay by us? Okay. So let's proceed to the front building for the group photograph. Thank you.